Sony is killing it, and when it comes to their animated films in recent years, from films like Spider-Verse 1 and 2, The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Vivo, and most recently, the Netflix hit, K-pop Demon Hunters, which is set to be Sony Animation's newest blockbuster franchise. But since the season of Halloween is upon us, I thought it was the perfect time to talk about what used to be the definitive Sony Animation franchise that they cashed in on time and time again, and that of course is the Hotel Transylvania franchise, a franchise that spawned from a huge surprise delight of a movie. But after the last couple of sequels, the franchise ran out of steam and was put to rest in 2022, while there were attempts to bring the franchise back in the form of a spin-off Netflix show called Motel Transylvania, that very quickly faded into obscurity. So for now, the franchise is dead. But how did such a massive franchise that was making more money with each installment fall apart and collapse in such a painful way? Well, let's talk about the slow and painful death of the Hotel Transylvania franchise. Now, the idea of Hotel Transylvania was in the works since 2008, from comedy writer Todd Durham, who had the idea to make an animated film based around universal monsters like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, the Invisible Man and the Werewolf. The idea would eventually become Hotel Transylvania. The film was in development hell for a long time, until Genndy Tartakovsky came on to direct and reworked everything from the animation to the story to the style of comedy, and in September 2012, Hotel Transylvania was released. It was a surprise hit at the box office, making over $200 million. While the critics were not so fond of the film, audiences had a good time with it, and they produced enough fanfare that Sony felt confident to move forward with the sequel. In 2015, Hotel Transylvania 2 was released, and it was a monster hit, doubling the first movie's box office intake, making over $400 million. Despite being trashed by critics and audiences not being on board as much as they were with the first, the franchise still pushed on. Disney even produced a spin-off prequel show set 4 years before the events of the original. It wasn't beloved, but it lasted for a bit. In 2018, Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation was released, and it made the most money out of the three so far, making over $500 million at the box office despite going up against Titan releases like Avengers Infinity War and Incredibles 2. However, once again, the critics were still not on board with this franchise and the audience interest slipped further. In 2022, the final Hotel Transylvania movie came out. However, despite it intended to be a theatrical release like the first three, Sony sold it to Amazon Prime Video, since this was in the heart of the coronavirus pandemic and they didn't feel confident in pushing a huge marketing campaign for a movie that had very little chance of turning a profit at that time. However, even still, it premiered to very low numbers. Audiences and critics both agreed that this movie was the low point of the franchise. After that, Sony put this franchise to rest. There were attempts to bring the franchise back. In late 2024, Netflix released a trailer and concept art for a spin-off show called Motel Transylvania. But since then, there have been no updates on the production of the show, so it's safe to assume the project has been shelved or scrapped entirely, and thus is the end of the Hotel Transylvania franchise. Now, why did the Hotel Transylvania franchise end? Well, there's a few obvious reasons. First, franchise fatigue, which is the case for most long-running franchises. Look at Ice Age, Transformers and even Despicable Me. People started off at least tolerating this franchise and even enjoyed the comedy and characters, but by the time they got to Hotel Transylvania 3, the interest in this franchise was starting to wane. Although it was successful at the box office, nobody liked it that much. The characters in the world just weren't that interesting anymore, and the creativity with these films was severely lacking in this film. The few creative ideas it did have didn't stick out as much. It felt like the franchise was doing the bare minimum and the charm of this franchise just wasn't there anymore. Which is why I think Sony decided to end this franchise after 4, because they knew the audience interest in this franchise was dwindling fast. Second, the creative style changes at Sony Pictures Animation. They were once not highly regarded as an animation studio. In fact, they were seen as bottom of the barrel fare for animated films. Films like Open Season, Smurfs 1 and 2 and especially the Emoji Movie really damaged their image, until Spider-Verse came out, which changed the game for animation and gave audiences interest in Sony Animation once again. They then followed it up with films like The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Vivo, Spider-Verse 2 and this year's mega hit K-pop Demon Hunters. They had changed from a studio that was known for lowbrow comedies with a bit of effort to groundbreaking innovative storytellers that could rival the likes of Disney and DreamWorks. With that reputation, I think Sony felt it was time to put Hotel Transylvania to rest and move on to better projects. Third, the franchise was out of ideas. By the time the fourth film came out, they had pretty much covered all the story they could with this franchise. Dracula finding his old hotel is destroyed, gives Mavis and Johnny the key to the hotel business, and allows them to rebuild and open their own hotel, which is far different from the original. While you could make a Hotel Transylvania 5 about them running this new hotel and facing new challenges, I don't think Sony would want to take a risk on a franchise that was declining and the audience had abandoned and lost interest in since the third film. Overall, guys, the Hotel Transylvania franchise was an enjoyable series of films. It had a lot of great stuff, a lot of bad, but overall, it was fun. This franchise was certainly a lot better than it had any right to be, especially for a franchise starring Adam Sandler. No offense to that guy, but most of his films are not that deep. I don't think I'm stepping out of turn when I say that. This series could have been just another half-assed comedy franchise like Grown Ups. But this franchise actually tried to have an emotional core, impactful character arcs and a story that was satisfying enough to see concluded, and for that, I think it deserves some form of commendment, but I think we will see this franchise come back again in the future. After all, we thought that Ice Age was done, but we're literally getting Ice Age 6 next year. And of course Toy Story 5 is shocking audiences by its existence, so I think Hotel Transylvania coming back isn't out of the realm of possibility, but I think they should change it up, maybe focus on the now grown-up Dennis and Winnie as they find out how to run the hotel business after Johnny and Mavis retire. That's just an idea, but for now, the franchise is done. Anyways guys, what do you think? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you guys later, and I hope you guys have a happy Halloween.